So today we will look at another cognitive assumptions which is quite significant in studying morphology, and that is authenticity. Now, what is authenticity? In the cognitive study of language, grammar, that is knowledge of language, is authentic. So we understand that grammar is authentic, and we know that when we use language, then we follow grammatical rules of a particular language. In different language, there are different grammatical rules, and we follow those rules consciously, subconsciously when we speak a language. Authenticity is the quality of linguistic units being real or true, conforming to fact and therefore worthy of belief. Grammar is derived from language use and or grounded in utterances. So grammar is derived from language use. So when can you have grammar? When you use language. When you observe language, then you find that there is some grammar. And then you try to find out what is the grammar of that particular language. For example, English, in English language, you have subject, verb and object. But in Hindi language, you have subject, object and verb as a basic sentence structure in the declarative form. So when you speak a declarative sentence, then you are able to know the word order of a declarative sentence. So grammar is derived from language use or grounded in utterances. Saussure, the founder of modern linguistics, also states that spoken is primary and writing secondary. That means first we speak language and later on we write it. So grammar we find in the written form. So something that is in written form, that is secondary thing. What is primary thing? Primary thing is the spoken form. Spoken form is known as utterance. So first we observe the utterance and then we try to jot down them and then we try to find out the grammar of the particular language. So what is an utterance? Utterances are actual instances of language. Sentence is an abstraction and utterances are actual instances. Now what is the difference between utterance and a sentence? Because sentence you use to teach students, let's say English language. In a grammar book you will find many sentences. So there is one sentence, let's say John loves Mary. Now you use this sentence in the grammar class. You want to teach your student what is a subject, what is an object and what is a finite verb. But there is no actual John and there is no actual Mary. But John and Mary are just the abstraction. Like any person can be a John, any male person can be a John, and any female person can be Mary. And like people love each other, so John loves Mary is becomes an example. So this is a sentence, an abstraction. But if you actually know someone who is a John and you actually know someone who is a Mary, and then you use in real life and you tell your friend that, do you know that John loves Mary, then it will become an utterance. Or let's say you have used this sentence John loves Mary in a grammar class and you are telling your colleague that, okay, today I have used John loves Mary, a sentence to teach subject, object and finite verb in my class. Then again, this telling of what you did in your class will become an utterance. So utterances are actual instances of language which represent usage event. So we use different utterances depending upon different usage events. A usage event is an actual utterance used to serve a particular purpose in communication. Usage means use of a language, and use of a language depending upon particular event. For example, if you are greeting someone, then you will say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You are saying adieu, so you will say bye bye, goodbye. So these are usage events. So accordingly, you frame your utterance. In terms of structure, an utterance may consist of a single word like disbelief, a phrase like utter disbelief. So an utterance can have a single word. For example, someone ask you like, do you know what is a morpheme? You will say you will say yes, you will say I know. So is also an utterance. And when you say yes, then it is also an utterance. And when you say yes, I know, then it is also uh, an utterance. So an utterance may consist of a single word like disbelief, a phrase like utter disbelief, or a sentence like she shook her head in disbelief. Utterances are recorded in a corpus. So we have new term here, corpus. So what is a corpus? We will look at. So where do you find utterances? They are recorded in corpus. The corpus is a list of all such sentences that are there, all such utterances, all such actual instances of language that are recorded. So you can record utterances through various means. For example, someone is talking and you are continuously jotting down what someone is saying. Nowadays we have very very tech savvy, so we can record in a recorder. You can have a video recording. So utterances are recorded in a corpus and you will start saving that. A large amount of written or spoken data collected to show the state of a language. So why we record this? Because we want to preserve, we want to show that people use this type of utterance, people use this type of language in real life, and that is the purpose of recording it. And not only that, we later on analyze that what are the changes that are there in a language. So these are certain concepts that we have. So that's why the knowledge of language is authentic. Based on the utterance, based on the usage event, we say that knowledge of language is authentic. Authentic means something that is real. So theoretically, corpus provides actual, non-elicited and spontaneous data. So it is not the case like someone is providing you the artificial data. Artificial data, that means like constructed data. That is not the part of a corpus. Corpus is like something very spontaneous, something that is natural. For example, like a news reporter talking to people. So that type of data is again the part of corpus, because that is quite actual data, spontaneous data. Because people, they do not know what type of question the news reporter will raise. At the same time, news reporter also doesn't know that what type of answer they will provide. So this type of data is actual, spontaneous data. That is a part of corpus. It can thus help one to make accurate observations about the real state of language. So real state of language, if you want to know, so it is not the case like you read the novelist, because novelist, they are not using the real state of language. There is a possibility that they are constructing language. Let's say they want to show that in a novel there are three characters. One is a teenager, one is an adult, and one person is an old. So they will not speak the same type of language. A teenager will use different type of expression, an adult will use different type of expression, and a person in an old age will use different type of. So the writer will use these three type of, but those three types will never be the real state of language. So that is the difference between a corpus and elicit data. Practically, corpus provides important techniques for language description. It can thus help one to work out meaning differences between lexical expression. So one such technique is collocation. So we are talking about like what are the different techniques corpus can provide. So corpus provides important techniques for language description, that how we can describe a language. So one such technique is your collocation. And what is collocation? The habitual co-occurrence of words. For example, when I say penury means poverty. So penury is a word for poverty. So generally this word penury comes with chill. So chill penury, that means I'm talking about the abject poverty. So there is another expression like abject poverty that we have. So chill penury and abject poverty. So what is this like? Why abject is coming with poverty, or why chill is coming with penury? So this is the collocation, like habitual occurrence, co-occurrence, like this word attracts the other word, that is collocation. For example, when you talk about, let's say, cross. So cross in Christianity. So when you think of cross, then you think of Jesus Christ, then you think of redemption, you think of Christianity. All such things are associated with each other. So this is habitual co-occurrence that we have. It serves to allocate a semantic value to a searched for word. For example, collocation of sensual describe something as appealing to body. So there is a word like sensual. So when we use sensual, then obviously we need to use something that is related to body. So we have different type of expressions, and we are using this word sensual. So what type of sentence we can make? They were impressed by the sensual movement of the dancer. So this is one expression they are using. They were impressed by the sensual movement of the dancer. Nowhere they are using the word body, but appealing to body. So what is appealing to body? Sensual movements of the dancer. So nowadays we have like belly dancers and different type of dancers. So what do? They make different type of movements from their body part. So that is like sensual movements of the dancer. So again, like the word sensual is related to body, whereas collocations of sensuous, now there is a change. One is sensual. So sensual is associated with body, and when it is sensuous, describe something as appealing to the mind. So this is a difference, a very subtle difference that you have. When you have sensual, then it is body. When it is sensuous, then it is to mind. So they appreciated the sensuous music of the concert concert. So like this sensuous music has nothing to do with body, it has to do with enjoyment of your mind. So the music is going inside your mind, and you are enjoying it, and you are enjoying the entire concert. Fine. So this is like the different subtle difference that we have. So this is why this is so, because of the collocation, that sensuous words is related to mind, and sensual it is related to body. So now for morphology, the cognitive assumption of authenticity has three significant effects. So now again, three things we will discuss with respect to authenticity. Morphological expressions, that means morpheme we are talking about, include utterances representing actual occurrences uttered in communicative interaction. A morphological utterance is a spoken or written expression. So an utterance can be recorded in a written form, or it is also in the spoken form. So we need to take utterance means both spoken as well as written. The speaker's knowledge of morphological expression is based on their situated instances of use. Morphological expressions are dynamic, subject to create extension. So a good example is offered by the utterance, prevent is better than cure. Actually it is prevention. Prevention is better than cure. And we have studied this thing in our lower grades as well, that prevention is better than cure. So but what we are doing here, we are not using the word prevention, but what we are using the word prevent. So why is it so? In which the first word does not conform to acceptable usage. We know that prevent is grammatically wrong, prevention is grammatically correct. Prevent is not acceptable, but prevention is acceptable, but still we are using prevent is better than cure. The customary rules that govern written and spoken language. So the right form should be the noun prevention. So this is the thing, that there is a possibility that the speaker's knowledge of morphological expression that is based on their situated instance of use, and for that particular reason, there is a possibility that morphological expressions they are dynamic and subject to create some extension. So there is a possibility that dynamic means like prevention become prevent in some situation. So in that way we are talking about. So it's not the case like someone has written that prevention is better than cure is in a grammatical book 100 years back. People have been following for past 40-50 years, and then people started using prevent is better than cure. So when we say authentic, that that knowledge of language is authentic, that means like even if people are saying prevent is better than cure, then this will become the authentic use of language, even though it is not conforming to the grammatical rules. So this is one activity based on this first significant effect. And what is that? Fill in the blanks of the following utterances with the correct usage of the words between bracket. So you need to find out the correct usage of this word, and you need to write in the bracket. So again, you can do this activity and send your answers to the to the email ID by 5 p.m. Now, second significant event is morphological expressions have substance and use. So these two terms are there. We need to understand what is the meaning of substance and what is the meaning of use. So substance is related to content. So what is substance? The substance consists of two parts, form and meaning. So we have two things, like we have a form and we have a meaning. Like previously we have studied that we have a phonological structure and we have semantic structure, and phonological structure and semantic structure, they are linked by symbolic structure that we have seen. So similarly, substance consists of two parts, form and meaning. That means substance is like a sign. So when I say tree, then tree has a form like TREE, the spelling tree. There are three sounds, t, r, and e. That is also the part of free form. And the meaning is the image of tree, the concept of tree that is there in your mind. So substance consists of two parts, form and meaning. The form is the phonological representation. The meaning is the idea conventionally associated with it. So this thing we have already studied previously. This is again the repetition or paraphrase of the knowledge that we have already studied. The use is the way language user construes the content. For example, the word tree, and you will say like she is standing like a tree. Now here tree doesn't mean a tree where birds live, or tree that provides you oxygen. Now that is not the meaning of tree here when you say she is standing like a tree, because you are using tree in altogether different context. So what is the meaning of tree here? You are saying that she is very static, like she is not mobile, she is not moving, she is standing like a tree. That type of thing is there. Don't stand like a tree, do some work. So when you say don't stand like a tree, do some work, again here tree doesn't mean that someone who is standing like tree is providing oxygen to all the other people, or someone who is standing like a tree is like giving shelter to birds. It means like the person is doing nothing and standing only. So that type of meaning is associated with the use. So the use is the way the language user construes the content. The substance is activated as a response to the language use. Activated, like we have a substance, but it is activated. That means it can change according to the context, according to the language use. A clear example is afforded by the adjectival pair triumphal and triumphant. So there are two examples, triumphal and triumphant. Now the triumphal example is associated. So when you use this word, like adjectives that derived from the root triumph, you know triumph means victory, and from victory these words are associated, but they are far apart in use. So the way you use them, it is far apart. That means like you use them in different contexts. So when you use triumphal in describing events, the adjective triumphal is used, whereas it is describing people, the adjective triumphant is used. Fine. So when you describe the event, like when there is a war and one party wins the war, then you will say triumphal. So describing events is associated with triumphal, and describing people is associated with triumphant. So this is the difference that you have. So this is the second, substance and use, that is there. So again, each of the following italicized morphological expression violates correct usage. So they are wrongly used here. Write the correct expression. So you need to just write the correct expression. They are used wrong. So you can consult a dictionary and you can correct them, write them, send to email ID by 5 p.m. today. Now the third significant effect under authenticity is morphological expressions can be adequately described by analyzing their surroundings, which significantly affect their meaning. So it's like we need to understand the surrounding where the word is used. One such surrounding is collocation. So like how one word is associated with different word. For example, when we talk about tree, we will talk about trunk, we will talk about birds, we will talk about let's say leaves, we will talk about stem, we will talk about seed. Fine, we will talk about oxygen. but it is not the case that when you are thinking about tree and you are thinking about let's say rocket, fine, or when say you are thinking about tree and let's say you are thinking about sky, fine. So that thing will not happen. So you are writing something about tree, then you will think of the nearby things, like you will think about the roots, you will think about the sand and all other things that you will think of. You think about earth, you think about freshness and all other things, greenery. So this thing is basically collocation. One such surrounding is collocation, the case when two or more words go together and form a common expression. So how two words they make a pair and they go together. A simple example is supplied by the pair triumphal and triumphant. We have previously discussed that triumphal is used for events and triumphant is used for describing people. So the adjective triumphal describes events and so collocates with words such as march. March here doesn't mean the month March, but March means like the march of the soldiers, parade, pomp, procession, show, and so on. So it's like you have a parade, fine, on let's say 15th of August and 26th of January. So why is it so? It is simply a march, it is a parade, it is a show, it is a procession, it is a pomp in order to show triumphal. So it's like an event. Like previously, our army has defeated the enemy army in different events. So it's like a pomp and show. The adjective triumphant describes people, as we have seen, and so allocates with the words such as army, force, marcher, team, troop. Fine. So again, like you can see the difference. Army, that means like of people. Force is again like of people. Marcher, someone who is doing the march. Team again consists of people. Troop again consists of soldiers. So here there is a difference. There is a difference when you use these words, and how subtle is the difference that you can very well observe. So give two noun collocations which help to distinguish between the following morphological pair. So like something that is tragic and tragical, fine. So that you can again consult your dictionary and you can find out like there is very subtle difference in the bound morpheme here, and the root is same, but what is the collocation? Like these words will come like tragic story, fine. So that type of thing you can do. Now the last thing that is associated with cognitive assumption and morphology, that is semanticity. Semanticity is the quality of being meaningful. Semantics is the study of meaning. So in the cognitive view of language, grammar is inherently meaningful. So we believe that grammar is inherently meaningful because when we use grammar, then generally it produces meaningful utterances. So that's why grammar is inherently meaningful. Semanticity is the ability of linguistic units, be they simple phrase or complete sentences, to convey meaning by means of symbols. So like this language uses like a symbol, we combine them and we make meaningful utterances or sentences. For example, John is a symbol, loves is a symbol, and Mary is a symbol. So John loves Mary is actually three symbols that we are using, and it is an example of a complete sentence, and then it is quite meaningful. So meaning is equated with conceptualization. So why John loves Mary is meaningful? Because we have some concept that there can be a person in this world named John and there can be a person named Mary in this world, and they can love each other. Fine. So that's why John loves Mary is quite meaningful here, because some concept of love that is there in our mind. We have seen people around us, they love each other. So that's why like it is quite meaningful for us, that meaning is equated with conceptualization. Meaning reflects not only the content of a situation, so a content of a situation that is there, but also how the speaker describes that content in alternative ways. So there is a word like he is unhappy. Now he is unhappy can be described as he is not happy, fine, or he is sad, or he is depressed. So that means like we can describe the same situation in different ways. So we have different words and through which we can describe it. So sad is equal to unhappy, we can use it in that manner. Fine. Unhappy is equal to not happy, so we can use like he is unhappy, and we can use 4 words he is not happy. That is also possible. Meaning is conveyed in spoken and written discourse. We know written discourse is represented in text. So here, like we have a concept of textbook, and textbooks are generally written. So here what they believe or what they are writing, that written discourse is represented in text. A text is a body of spoken and written material which represent an extended unit of language. So basically the extended definition of a text is that anything that has some meaning, that has some content, is a text. The meaning of a text can be derived from the context in which it occurs. So if you meet me and you greet me good morning and I reply John loves Mary, then it is out of context, because context says that you have greeted me good morning, then I will also reply in good morning or okay fine, such type of expression I will use. But you said good morning and I replied John loves Mary, then what happens? Like the meaning of a text can be derived from the context in which it occurs. So you don't you will not understand like how good morning is associated with John loves Mary. Or if you say like let's go and eat something, and someone says John loves Mary, then it is out of context. So out of context thing is never meaningful. So text is always meaningful because it occurs in a context. What is a context? Context is the part of a discourse surrounding an expression which disambiguates its meaning. So that means like John loves Mary is not meaningful when you say in a reply to good morning, but it becomes meaningful when it is used in a grammar class, or when you actually know John and when you actually know Mary, and you are telling that, okay, do you know that John loves Mary? So context accounts for two phenomena. There are two phenomena that is associated with context. One is ambiguity. Ambiguity when a thing has more than one meaning. For example, bank is an ambiguous word because bank means a financial institution, and bank also means a river bank. So the case when one and the same expression can be interpreted in more than one way. So when I say I am going to a bank, then the meaning is a river bank or a financial institution. For example, the expression killer has two interpretations here. It can refer to a person as in they found the killer. Fine. So now here the killer is like someone who has actually killed someone. So they found the killer, or a thing as in cancer is the killer. Now cancer is not a person, but it is like a virus that you have that in your body. So that type of thing is like cancer is a killer has a different meaning, and they found the killer, or that is a different meaning. So one thing, context accounts for two phenomena. First phenomena is ambiguity that we have seen. That means a word has more than one meaning. And second is rivalry. Now what is this rivalry? The case when two or more affixes or lexical expressions occur in the same environment but convey different messages. Like we have seen sensuous and sensual, that type of thing is there. That is the rivalry. Like sensual is associated with body, and sensuous is associated with mind. So similarly, we have ish bound morpheme and y bound morpheme. So we have a root like freak. So we can say freakish, and we can also say freaky. Freakish describes character, as in she dislikes freakish visitor. Fine. So freak means strange or odd, and we are talking that we are saying that she dislikes strange visitors. So freakish. But when we say freaky, that means it describes appearances. So she dislikes freaky clothes. So here freaky means like the clothes which are quite different in appearances, quite strange in appearances. So again, you can see that how this rivalry happens. So again, with semanticity, we have three significant corollaries. And what are they? Morphological expressions occurs in text. We know a text is a type of spoken or written discourse that we have also seen. No matter what the text is, text can be a narrative, text can be procedural, like one after another, expository, fine, or descriptive. So these are different type of texts that we have. So when we read a novel, then it is narrative. When we read like how something is to be cooked in a cookery book, that is like a procedural. there is like a description of a beauty of a place, then it is a descriptive. So it is important because it provides the clues which enables a speaker to learn the use of the right expression. So like different type of text, and they have different type of expressions that are used, and subsequently send the right message. A striking example is the text, a person who is in a state of being trusted or respected falls into. So like you need to complete the meaning, like a person who is in a state of being trusted, fine, or respected falls into. So what you will write here? So someone who is being trusted. To complete its meaning, the text require the use of the word disrepute, fine. So that type of thing is there. So this is another example that you have. Again, you can do it, and you can submit this one tomorrow by 5. And what you need to do, using suitable derivational morpheme, write the correct forms of the bracketed word to complete the definition in the following text. So like a utensil used for separating liquid from solid is a strainer, fine. So the strainer that you use when you prepare tea, so that type of thing that you need to do, but this thing you need to submit tomorrow. Now the second corollary is morphological expressions occur in context. We have seen context is an environment in which an utterance is used. It is the best evidence available in accounting for multiple meanings for an expression. So I have given you an example like tree, and tree can be used in different expression as well. It shows that the meaning of an expression is not fixed but changes relative to the demands of discourse. A telling example is the expression cleaner. So this word cleaner has two meanings. He has an evening job as an office cleaner. So here the person is the cleaner. The expression cleaner refers to a person whose job is to clean places. And the second example is we have run out of floor cleaner. So this is cleaner is like we are talking about the substance that is used to clean floor. So the expression cleaner refers to a substance used for cleaning objects. So this is again the context. The next thing that you need to do, and you need to submit by tomorrow 5, the following expressions have two meanings. Try to provide the context which set their meanings apart. So you need to write them in sentence and where the meaning is understood very clearly. Reader, woman doctor. So woman doctor can be a female doctor, and a doctor that treats woman is again a woman doctor. So that type of thing you need to do. Then the last corollary under semanticity is morphological expressions sharing a common source are different in meaning. They exhibit rivalry. So root is same, but the bound morpheme is different, and because that meaning is different. For example, you have a word like childish and childlike. Now child root is same, but because of this they show a rivalry. Like sense is same, but sensuous and sensual, they show a rivalry. Freak is the word, and freakish and freaky, they show the rivalry. So in childish, ISH describes a person as being immature, irrational, and impatient. So when you say like he is childish, that means you are talking about immaturity. But if you say he is childlike, then you are talking about innocence, you are talking about honesty. So associated with this is this activity, and this you will submit by tomorrow 5 p.m. What you need to do, single out the correct rival morpheme. So you need to find out like which morpheme is appropriate in this context, in this particular root. So root is same in the sentence, and you need to find out like which will go with this. So it's like quite simple, but again this you need to submit by tomorrow 5 p.m. So what we have discussed in the previous classes, the symbolicity, conventionality, creativity, authenticity, and semanticity under cognitive assumptions and morphology. So we have discussed all such things during past many days, and this is for the day, and I stop here. So your examination, you already know that your examination is on 20th May, and I will not take any further classes, so it will give you time to revise